Hello, this is Jane Talbot and it is day 5 of my animal communication adventure. This morning I listened to the 5th part of Asia Voigt's animal communication course, and it's a recording of a live event, and it became clear to me that a piece of work had been set between programme 4 and programme 5, and people in the live event had been paired up with each other and were to work with each other's pets at a distance. And I think this was a really good idea, because the idea was for them to connect with someone else's animal, and once they'd made that connection, to communicate with that animal and see if they could get any information, and then they could feed that information back to the animal's owners. And it was a way of actually checking whether they had got the communication right. So for me, this was quite a useful convincer. Is this real? Let me test it, and haven't got a way of testing it other than relying on my direct experience. And this seemed to be a good idea. So what I have done is done a similar experiment with a dead animal. So right at the beginning of the programme, Asia suggested that not only could you do it with animals who were actually present with you, but you could do this with animals at a distance and also animals that were no longer alive. So my husband is a bit of a skeptic, and he suggested that I try to make contact with Jane. Jane was a collie dog owned by my husband's family, and she died a couple of years ago. She was very old. She was in her early 20s. And I thought, right, okay, and the challenge, the invitation by my husband was make a connection with her and get her to communicate something to you, and then you communicate it to me and I'll let you know whether you got it right or not. So I thought, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to give this a go. Completely open-minded about this. I'm not sure if I can make sense of any of the experience I've had over the last couple of days, but I am still open to it. So I lay down on the sofa and I followed the instructions to the letter. Slowed down my breathing, got myself deeply relaxed, imagined myself in my favourite place in nature, opened my heart centre, and then I called Jane. So I know what Jane looks like. I have met her before, and nothing happened. When I say nothing happened in my mind's eye, but I had a sense of something really big next to me. And I turned my head with my eyes closed, and I could see a huge dog that definitely wasn't a collie and definitely wasn't Jane. It was very dark, almost black, with distinctive caramel markings, and I don't know much about dog breeds, so I have been on the internet since my experience and Googled a little bit, and it could have been a German Shepherd, it could have been a Bernese Mountain Dog, something of that size anyway. And it put its paw onto the sofa next to me. So I thought, well, I'm going to play with this. I don't know how I'm creating this experience. I don't really know what's happening, but I am going to accept that I am having an experience. So I then said to this dog, thank you, can you go and get Jane, please? And he went off. I know it's a he because later on in the experience he actually spoke to me. So he went off and brought Jane back. But it was, I sensed Jane really didn't want to be there or wasn't open to connecting to me. I asked her to show me a picture, and she showed me cobblestones. I saw cobblestones, and I saw this deep red crimsony flower. It almost took up the whole of my field of vision with a yellow centre. And then that disappeared, and then all I could see was Jane just turning around in circles. Just turning around in circles. the presence, the energy of the presence, it was very small from Jane and quite timid. This dog next to me was massive, really powerful, and it still had its hand, its paw. It was something insisting, an insisting energy from his paw. So I then put my paw out to him. I had the instinct to touch his paw. And when I touched his paw, it's like I heard this voice. It said, Jane, just relax. And it was a manly, really manly, deep voice, very echoey, very reassuring. Just relax. And when I heard those words, just relax, I really relaxed. All the tension in my body was very acutely aware of being tense and then acutely aware of really being relaxed and kind of cradled, comforted. It was a very powerful feeling, and it was in my body but also bigger than my body as well. And I just thought, well, I'm going to allow this experience, which I did. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to ask any more questions. I'm not going to push, light touch. That's what I learned yesterday. I'll just go with this. Then after a while, I knew Jane had gone and this dog was still there, and I said thank you. And now I'm going to end the communication. And I did, but the dog stayed there. I'm not sure if it's still there. The strangest thing of all, though, is when I invited Jane in and this big dog came, Sparky had been in his box. It's very cold and wet here today, and he'd gone and snuggled into his box, which isn't in the living room where I was doing this exercise. When the big dog arrived, Sparky rushed in and started barking. Now, he normally barks, he's quite territorial when he has a sense or can see another dog, a cat or a bird. Those are three things he's not really comfortable with. And he's normally barking when he's on the sofa looking out of the window seeing these things. But he was in his box, so he couldn't see anything. But he came rushing in and started barking at absolutely nothing. And I thought that was, well, I noticed it. So anyway, I then telephoned my husband and told him that, well, I'd had this experience, and had they ever had a big dog of this description, and they have had a big mountain dog. They had a Pyrenean mountain dog, not a Bernese mountain dog or an Alsatian, I don't think. But their big dog was white, so I don't really know what happened. But what I can tell you from these last 4 or 5 days is what I'm experiencing is really positive. It doesn't really matter if I'm not connecting with animals, if that bit isn't real. What is real is the feeling. The feeling of connection is really powerful. And the warmth and the openness and the welcoming and this like home feeling, which I recognise from my out-of-body experience, I am feeling it. And even if I'm creating this for myself, do you know, might do a bit more of that. Might do a bit more of that. Feels good. On to something new tomorrow.